There are moments when evil wears the mask of family and cruelty hides behind closed doors, when a child suffers in silence because no one cares enough to look closely or ask the right questions. This is the story of such a child, living in hell disguised as a home in a small Texas town in 1880, and the stranger who saw what everyone else ignored and made a choice that changed two lives forever. It begins with violence hidden in plain sight, continues with an offer that shocked an entire community, and ends with redemption and love powerful enough to heal even the deepest wounds. The child was a girl named Lucy Morgan, 15 years old, and bearing scars both visible and invisible from years of abuse at the hands of a stepmother whose cruelty knew no limits. The stranger was a cowboy named Nathaniel Cross, a man of few words and strong principles who happened to be in the right place at the right moment to witness something that made his blood boil and his heart break. What Nathaniel did that day, the bargain he struck, and the responsibility he took on, became legend throughout Texas as the story of the cowboy who bought a girl not to use her but to save her, and in saving her discovered that broken people can heal each other if they have the courage to try. Lucy Morgan's mother had died when Lucy was 8 years old, leaving her in the care of her father Samuel, a farmer who struggled to manage his land and raise a daughter alone. Within a year, Samuel had remarried a woman named Beatrice, who seemed pleasant and capable during courtship, but revealed her true nature the moment the wedding vows were spoken. Beatrice had married Samuel not out of love, but out of desperation for financial security, and she viewed Lucy as an unwanted burden, a reminder that Samuel had loved another woman before her. The abuse started small, harsh words and unfair punishments, but it escalated over the years into physical violence that left bruises Lucy learned to hide beneath long sleeves and high collars. Samuel was a weak man who saw what was happening but lacked the courage to stop it, choosing the path of least resistance by pretending he did not notice when Lucy appeared at breakfast with a black eye or moved stiffly from beatings delivered the night before. Beatrice was careful to maintain appearances in public, presenting herself as a respectable woman, and Lucy as a clumsy, difficult child who caused her own problems. The townspeople of Dry Creek either believed Beatrice's lies or simply did not care enough to investigate further. Lucy endured this nightmare with quiet resilience, doing all the hard work around the farm while Beatrice sat in the house, giving orders and finding reasons to administer punishment. Lucy cooked and cleaned and tended the animals, her thin body working from dawn until long after dark while her stepmother grew fat and lazy on the fruits of Lucy's labor. The girl never complained because she had nowhere to go and no one to turn to, and she had learned that speaking up only brought worse punishment. She found small moments of peace in caring for the chickens and the old farm dog who loved her unconditionally, and she dreamed of the day she would be old enough to escape, though she had no idea how she would survive alone in a world that seemed determined to crush her. Lucy's father grew sicker as the years passed, his body weakened by hard work and his spirit destroyed by guilt he refused to acknowledge. By the time Lucy turned 15, Samuel was bedridden much of the time, leaving Lucy even more vulnerable to Beatrice's escalating cruelty. Everything changed on a hot August afternoon when a stranger rode onto the Morgan farm looking to buy supplies. Nathaniel Cross was 32 years old, a cattle buyer who traveled throughout Texas purchasing stock for the big ranches up north. He was a tall man with sun-darkened skin and eyes, the color of whiskey, known throughout the territory as someone who was fair in his dealings and dangerous to cross. Nathaniel had stopped at the Morgan farm because he had heard they sometimes had eggs and vegetables to sell, and he needed to resupply before continuing his journey. He dismounted near the barn and was walking toward the house when he heard sounds that made him freeze in his tracks. There were sharp cracking sounds like something hitting flesh, and a girl's voice crying out in pain but trying to stay quiet, as if she had learned that loud crying only made things worse. Nathaniel moved quickly but quietly toward the barn where the sounds originated, and what he saw through the open door filled him with a rage so intense he had to force himself to stay calm and assess the situation before acting. Beatrice Morgan stood in the barn holding a thick leather strap, and at her feet was Lucy, curled on the ground trying to protect her head with her arms while her stepmother beat her with systematic brutality. Beatrice was cursing Lucy for burning the bread that morning, calling her worthless and stupid. punctuating each word with another strike of the strap. Lucy's dress was torn, and blood seeped from cuts on her back, where previous beatings had not fully healed. Nathaniel had seen many terrible things in his years traveling the rough frontier, but something about this scene, this woman beating a defenseless girl with such cold enjoyment in her eyes, struck him as particularly evil. He stepped into the barn, and his voice came out low and dangerous, ordering Beatrice to stop immediately. Beatrice whirled around, startled and angry at being interrupted, but her anger turned to uncertainty when she saw the size and bearing of the man who had spoken. She lowered the strap and tried to compose herself, forcing a smile and explaining that this was family business, that Lucy was a difficult child who required firm discipline. Nathaniel looked at the girl on the ground, at her thin body, and the evidence of long-term abuse visible even through her clothing, and he knew with absolute certainty that what he was seeing was not discipline, but torture. He told Beatrice flatly that what she was doing was not discipline, but beating, and it was going to stop right now. Beatrice's face flushed with rage, and she demanded to know who Nathaniel thought he was, interfering in private family matters. She said Lucy was her stepdaughter, and she had every right to punish her as she saw fit. Nathaniel's jaw tightened, and he looked at Lucy with something like pity and anger mixed together, and then he looked back at Beatrice and asked a question that would become the moment everyone in Dry Creek talked about for years afterward. He asked Beatrice if she wanted to be rid of Lucy, if she would be willing to sell the girl to him right now, today, for a price that would make it worth her while. Beatrice stared at Nathaniel like she could not believe what she was hearing, and then a calculating look crossed her face as she realized the stranger was offering her a way to get rid of the burden she had resented for years and make money doing it. The concept of buying and selling children was not entirely unheard of on the frontier, though it was usually framed as indenture or adoption, and involved orphans or children whose families could not feed them. What Nathaniel was proposing was technically legal, but morally complicated. A business transaction that would transfer responsibility for Lucy from her family to him. Beatrice did not care about the morality, she only cared that this was an opportunity to solve her problem permanently. She told Nathaniel that Lucy ate too much and worked too little, that she was a burden on the family, and that Beatrice would be happy to let her go for the right price. Nathaniel named a figure that made Beatrice's eyes go wide with greed. $200 in gold, which was more money than the farm made in a year. Beatrice agreed immediately, showing no hesitation about selling her stepdaughter to a complete stranger who might have any kind of intentions. Nathaniel told her to get Samuel's signature on a paper transferring guardianship, and Beatrice practically ran to the house to wake her sick husband and force him to sign the document, not giving Samuel time to think or object. Lucy had remained on the barn floor during this exchange, too dazed and hurt to fully understand what was happening. When Nathaniel knelt beside her and told her gently that she was coming with him, that she would never be hit again, Lucy looked at him with eyes that were too old for her young face, eyes that had stopped believing in rescue long ago. She asked in a whisper if he was going to hurt her, and Nathaniel felt his heart break at the question. He told her he was not going to hurt her, that he was taking her away from this place, and she would be safe from now on. Lucy did not believe him, because experience had taught her that adults lied, but she also understood that going with this stranger could not possibly be worse than staying with Beatrice. When Beatrice returned with a signed document and her hand outstretched for the gold, Nathaniel counted out the money with disgust written all over his face. He told Beatrice that if he ever heard of her getting another child in her care, he would come back and make sure the whole territory knew what kind of woman she really was. Beatrice took the money without shame, already calculating how she would spend it, not even looking at Lucy as the girl was led away. Nathaniel helped Lucy onto his horse, noting how light she was, how years of inadequate food and hard work had left her undernourished and weak. He mounted behind her and they rode away from the Morgan farm, while Lucy looked back at the only home she had ever known, feeling a confusing mix of relief and terror at the unknown future ahead of her. Nathaniel took Lucy to the doctor in Dry Creek first, despite her protests that she was fine. The doctor examined her privately and emerged looking angry and sad, telling Nathaniel that Lucy had multiple injuries in various stages of healing, evidence of sustained abuse over a long period. He treated her wounds and gave Nathaniel salve and instructions, refusing payment and telling Nathaniel he was doing a good thing, taking the girl away from that situation. Nathaniel then took Lucy to the general store and bought her new clothes, boots, and a warm coat for when weather turned cold. Lucy stood in the store, overwhelmed by his generosity, unable to understand why this stranger was spending money on her when she had nothing to offer in return. That evening, Nathaniel took Lucy to the boarding house where he had rented a room, and he made arrangements for Lucy to have her own separate room down the hall. He sat with her while the landlady brought up dinner, and Nathaniel watched Lucy eat like someone who expected the food to be taken away at any moment, quickly and without enjoyment. When she finished, Nathaniel finally explained his intentions in words Lucy could understand. He told her that he had bought her freedom from a terrible situation, and now she had a choice about her future. He said he traveled constantly for his work and needed someone to manage his home base, a small ranch he owned near San Antonio but rarely visited. He offered Lucy a job as his housekeeper, with fair wages and her own quarters, and he promised her that she would be treated with respect and never harmed. He told her she could accept his offer, or he would help her find other work in Dry Creek, that the choice was entirely hers, and she should take time to think about it. Lucy stared at this man, who had appeared out of nowhere, and completely changed her life in the space of a few hours, and she asked him the question that mattered most to her. She asked why he had done this, why he had spent so much money to save someone he did not even know. Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment before he answered, and when he spoke, his voice carried old pain. He told Lucy that when he was a boy, his mother had been beaten by his father regularly, and young Nathaniel had been too small and weak to protect her. His mother had died when Nathaniel was 12, and he had always believed the years of abuse had contributed to her early death. He said that when he saw Beatrice beating Lucy, he saw his mother, and he could not walk away from a chance to save someone the way he had failed to save his own mother. He told Lucy that she reminded him that sometimes we get second chances to do the right thing, and he was grateful for the opportunity to help her. Lucy listened to this confession with tears streaming down her face, and for the first time in 7 years, she felt something like hope stirring in her chest. She told Nathaniel she would accept his offer, that she would go to his ranch and work for him, and she would prove he had not made a mistake in saving her. The journey to Nathaniel's ranch took 5 days, and during that time, Lucy began the slow process of learning to trust again. Nathaniel was patient and kind, never touching her unnecessarily, and always explaining where they were going and what would happen next. He taught her to ride properly and showed her how to care for the horses. He bought her books when they passed through towns and encouraged her to read in the evenings while they camped. He treated her like a person with value, like someone whose thoughts and feelings mattered, and Lucy slowly began to believe that maybe the nightmare was truly over. When they arrived at the ranch, Lucy discovered a small but well-built house on beautiful land with a creek running through it. Nathaniel showed her around and introduced her to the 2 ranch hands who maintained the property in his absence. He gave Lucy the largest bedroom in the house and told her to make it her own, to decorate it however she wanted. Lucy could barely comprehend having her own space, her own room that no one would invade to punish her. Over the following months, Lucy bloomed like a flower finally given water and sunlight. She took her housekeeping duties seriously, keeping Nathaniel's home clean and preparing meals with care and creativity she had never been allowed to express at the Morgan farm. But Nathaniel treated her more like family than an employee, eating meals with her and talking to her about his travels and asking her opinions on matters related to the ranch. When Nathaniel was away on business, Lucy managed the property with surprising competence, working with the ranch hands to handle problems and make decisions. She gained weight and her injuries healed, and the haunted look gradually faded from her eyes. Nathaniel found himself looking forward to returning home in ways he never had before, eager to see what Lucy had accomplished and to hear her excited stories about the books she had read or the garden she was planting. He realized he had started to think of Lucy not as an employee or even as someone he had rescued, but as family, as the daughter he had never had. 2 years after Nathaniel had taken Lucy from the Morgan farm, visitors to the ranch noticed something remarkable. Lucy had grown into a confident young woman who managed the ranch with skill and took pride in her work. She smiled easily and laughed often, showing no trace of the broken, terrified girl she had been. Nathaniel had legally adopted Lucy during the first year, giving her his name and making her his heir. He told anyone who asked that Lucy was the best decision he had ever made, that she had brought life and purpose to his empty house, and reminded him what he was working for. Lucy, now Lucy Cross, told people that Nathaniel had saved her life not just by removing her from an abusive situation, but by showing her what family was supposed to be, how adults were supposed to treat children with respect and kindness. She said Nathaniel had given her back her future and taught her that she had value beyond what she could produce through labor. When Lucy turned 18, Nathaniel threw her a birthday celebration that brought together everyone from the surrounding ranches and the nearby town. Lucy stood beside her adoptive father, accepting congratulations and good wishes, looking radiant in a new dress Nathaniel had commissioned specially for the occasion. During the party, Nathaniel made a speech that left many listeners with tears in their eyes. He told the assembled guests the story of how he had found Lucy being beaten in a barn and had made the impulsive decision to buy her freedom, not knowing if he was doing the right thing or making a terrible mistake. He said that Lucy had repaid his impulsive kindness 1,000 times over by being the family he never knew he needed, by bringing joy and purpose into his previously lonely existence. He told Lucy in front of everyone that she was the daughter of his heart, if not his blood, and that he was proud of the woman she had become. Lucy embraced Nathaniel while crying tears of happiness, and everyone who witnessed it understood they were seeing something special, a bond forged not through shared blood, but through choice and love and mutual respect. The story of the cowboy who bought a girl from her abusive stepmother spread throughout Texas and beyond, becoming one of those tales that people told to illustrate that heroes still existed and that one person could make a difference. Some people criticized Nathaniel for essentially purchasing a human being, arguing that it set a dangerous precedent regardless of his good intentions. But most people understood that Nathaniel had worked within an imperfect system to save a life, that he had seen suffering and acted when others had looked away, and that the outcome had been undeniably positive. Lucy herself spoke publicly about her experience as she grew older, using her story to advocate for better protections for children and to encourage people to intervene when they witnessed abuse rather than assuming it was none of their business. She never forgot where she had come from, or the man who had given her a second chance at life. Nathaniel and Lucy continued to work the ranch together for many years, building it into one of the most successful operations in the region. When Lucy was 23, she married a good man who understood her past and cherished her future, and Nathaniel walked her down the aisle with pride written all over his weathered face. He gave her a portion of the ranch as a wedding gift, ensuring she would always have security and independence. Lucy and her husband built a house on their section of land and raised 4 children who grew up knowing their grandfather Nathaniel as the man who had saved their mother's life and given their family its foundation. Nathaniel lived to be an old man, dying peacefully in his sleep at 72, surrounded by the family he had created through an act of impulsive compassion on a hot August day so many years before. At Nathaniel's funeral, Lucy delivered a eulogy that captured the essence of their relationship and the legacy he had left. She told the assembled mourners that Nathaniel Cross had been a man who saw evil and chose to fight it, who saw suffering and chose to end it, who saw a broken child and chose to give her a future. She said he had taught her that family is not defined by blood but by choice and commitment, that love is demonstrated through actions, not words, and that one person with courage can change the world for at least one other person, and sometimes that is enough. Lucy said that on the day Nathaniel told her stepmother to sell her to him instead of beating her, he had given her more than rescue from physical abuse. He had given her back her humanity, her sense of worth, her belief that she deserved to be treated with kindness. And in return, she had given him a reason to come home, a purpose beyond his work, and the joy of watching someone he loved flourish and grow into their full potential. The story of Sell Her to Me Instead endures as a powerful reminder that sometimes the most important thing we can do in this life is pay attention to what is happening right in front of us, to care enough about another person's suffering, to take action, even when it is uncomfortable or complicated. Nathaniel Cross did not set out to become a hero or to change anyone's life when he rode onto the Morgan farm that August day. He simply saw something wrong and refused to look away, made a choice in the moment that felt right even if it was unconventional, and then followed through on his commitment with patience and genuine care. Lucy Morgan Cross proved that even the most damaged person can heal given safety and love and respect, that resilience is real and broken people can become whole again. Together they demonstrated that family is what you make it, that love shows up in countless forms, and that the greatest act of courage is often simply choosing to see another person's pain and doing whatever you can to ease it, regardless of the cost or the judgment of others. Their story lives on teaching these lessons to each new generation, ensuring that the cowboy who saved the beaten girl and the girl who grew into a woman strong enough to save herself remain forever part of the legend and the truth of the Wild West.